This is GVPOD, Greater Vancouver's business podcast, where we explore the challenges and opportunities facing our region. I'm Bridgitte Anderson, President and CEO of the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade. Welcome back to the second episode of our series on the future of work and mental health in the workplace. Last time, we spoke with Paula Allen, Senior Vice President at TELUS Health, about the TELUS Mental Health Index and what the worrying trends mean for both employees and employers. As we aim to navigate our way through what experts are calling a mental health epidemic, many employers are seeking new ways to keep morale up and retention rates high without sacrificing productivity. Today, I am joined by one of the leading proponents of changing the way we work, Dr. Al, who is the program director at 4-Day Workweek Global and author of books such as Work Less, Do More, Designing the 4-Day Workweek, and Rest, Why You Get More Done When You Work Less. Now, 4-Day Workweek Global seeks to reshape the way we think about work by moving the conversation away from hours and onto productivity and output, helping firms implement a compressed work week and running multiple pilot projects across the world, including here in Canada, to measure the results. And I can't wait to dig into this. Welcome, Dr. Pong. Great to have you here.
Oh, thanks very much for having me.
Okay, so maybe let's start off with a bit of an introduction about the organization and how you ended up with the organization. What is your particular interest in this topic of a 4-day work week?
Sure. So 4-Day Week Global works with organizations, nonprofits, for-profit companies, and sometimes governments on moving to shorter work weeks, usually 4-day weeks, without cutting salaries or cutting expectations around client services or productivity, or et cetera. So you're not compressing the work week by going to 10-hour days, and you're not also cutting people's salaries. I got interested in this because a couple of years ago, I had written a book about the 4-day work week movement, which grew out of a project that I had done on the importance of rest in the lives of really creative and prolific people. And for me, the 4-day week was interesting because it was an opportunity to bring rest to kind of everybody at scale, instead of just, sort of famous professors or Nobel Prize winning scientists, and other people have a lot of control over their time. And my book happened to come out at the same time as the one written by the founder of 4-Day Week Global, Andrew Barnes. And so we knew each other and eventually kind of combined forces. And for the last couple of years, I've been running programs and consulting, which means that I'm the person who spends a lot of time answering questions that companies have about how they do this. What do you do about vacation days? What about this circumstance? And advising them on sort of how they can make this transition and make it stick.
I might need a little convincing on this one, Dr. Pong. And here's why my take on it. At the Board of Trade, we work on behalf of all sizes of businesses, and we keep a close eye on the economy. It is very clear that Canada has a productivity problem. In fact, the OECD says that we are one of the worst performing advanced economies globally. And I think, if I remember correctly, that our productivity has fallen by 9% over the last couple of decades. So right away, I think, okay, so you go to a 4-day work week or a shortened work week, and the first thing that will be impacted will be our productivity when we're already lagging behind the US and many European countries. How is it that working less will actually not impact and make productivity even worse?
So what companies do in order to make the 4-day week work is eliminate inefficiencies in the way that they work. They do things like take, that hour-long standing meeting that you have every week and turn it into a 10-minute stand-up. They also redesign the workday itself to give everybody more time for uninterrupted sort of focused work, or sort of deep work, as Cal Newport calls it. separate from time with clients or lunches, coffee breaks, or and so forth. Because it turns out, that studies tell us that the average office worker loses something like 2 to 3 hours of productive time every day to overly long meetings, technology-driven distractions, or outmoded processes that affect our productivity. So in a sense, we're already working a 4-day week. We're just also coming into the office on a fifth day and trying to figure out how to make the printer work and what the agenda is for this meeting. And so if you can get a handle on that stuff, you can get a long way to doing in 4 days what you're currently doing in 5. The other important thing about the 4-day week is that it provides a terrific incentive for people to find ways of being more effective and efficient, right? It offers a really clear reward for figuring out how to do ordinary tasks more quickly, perhaps how to automate them so that they can spend more energy on their higher value added sort of work. And so it's a way of sort of unlocking things that people already know about how to make work better in a way that benefits companies and also sort of benefits individuals. So that's what we're seeing in industries and and in countries sort of all over the world.
I can see how it would work for employees and
Mhm.
being, I mean, I am a leader of this organization, but I'm also an employee. So I do get that. But, where I really am struggling to see how this wouldn't impact productivity is because even over the last couple of years, because of the pandemic and work from home, and now this hybrid model that we all have and many of us are struggling with, we are seeing productivity being impacted on this work from home. So I don't think we're ever coming back to the office full time. And for those are this only really applies to those who do have to go or have the choice of rather of working at home or going into the office. So how do you balance that in this new kind of dynamic that we're in of this hybrid work?
Right. So I think that there are some companies that have already gone remote or gone hybrid, and that has turned out to be a kind of stepping stone toward adopting a 4-day work week. Right? They've had to make some of their meetings virtual. They've figured out how to use some online collaboration tools better, and this allows them to then think about playing around with work time in ways that they sort of hadn't before. For some other companies, the 4-day week is a way of getting people back into the office, right? Particularly businesses where it really actually matters a couple days a week to have people, around a table looking at prototypes or, reviewing a marketing plan, being able to see the same thing, and being able to interact with your colleagues, not
Mhm.
across a screen, but, sort of across the room. And a 4-day week essentially offers a trade-off that, yeah, we need you back in the office, but it's not going to be all 5 days. And so sort of you're able to maintain some of the flexibility that you've enjoyed while also sort of working in a way that improves your work and sort of makes for sort of a better workplace.
Canada has got a labor challenge. And I remember reading a report that, in fact, part of the problem is that, yes, we don't have enough workers. We know that, but it's that we need more workers because a lot of workers are taking time off.
Mhm.
So if we said even half of the companies out there move to a shortened work week, would that labor challenge, are we going to need even more workers? I mean, how do you account for the fewer days that you have people on the job?
Right. So no, I don't think anyone has yet modeled out how this would sort of play out at a regional or national economic level, and how much or of excess capacity or people who are underemployed, would sort of return to the workforce. What I can tell you though is that from the perspective of organizations that have seen lots of challenges during and after the pandemic and continue to suffer from really high turnover. Places like nursing homes, for example, where nurses' assistants may last for only a few months sort of in the job. What moving them to a 4-day week allows them to do is, number one, um, drive retention way up so that you are, and also make it possible to fully staff staff, your hospital wings, your floors, sort
Mhm.
of, etc. And so I think that it likewise, it is definitely the case that there are places like Oregon Community Credit Union, which has a 60-person call center. They were down something like 12 people sort of in before they implemented a 4-day week. Um, and they had some people who had previously quit come back to work for them. And so that means they can answer a higher call volume. It's easier for them to to have enough people during peak days or sort of operating times. And so sort of that's and so it serves both for companies to or to keep people in sort of business, but also it appears to encourage people back into the workforce.
Yeah, there's no question that it would be not only a good strategy for attracting talent, but for retaining talent. I think employers would fully agree that flexibility is one of the absolute essentials to ensuring that you've got a good talent pool. So it sounds like, though, to make this work, that there really needs to be some other sort of key issues addressed that maybe have been longstanding in the workplace. So, what kinds of things can employers do if they're considering a 4-day work week? Like, how would this be successful? It sounds like there needs to be investment in technology, but I don't know, maybe even taking a step back, they need to rethink the whole workday.
Mhm. Rethinking the workday will come as part of moving to a 4-day week. I think that, the things that I see that really make a difference between the companies that are successful and the ones that aren't have to do less with like investment in infrastructure or technology. Most places just use the same tools that they're already using. They just figure out how to use them a little smarter. But also, you see changes in the way in which sort of leadership works, right? It turns out no CEO knows everybody's job well enough to redesign it for them and tell them how to do it in 4 days.
True.
So, so you really need to give people sort of the opportunity to redesign their jobs themselves, to let individuals and teams do that. And for anyone who has, a certain amount of experience at their job, they know how to do it well, but they probably also have a list of things where if I was in charge, we would do things differently. A 4-day week is an opportunity to try those kinds of things and sort of to and in a way that brings benefit both to sort of that person and their team and sort of the company. I think, moving from a leadership style, a kind of command and control top down style, to one that is what management theorists call transformative leadership, right, where you are kind of creating a space in which people can do really good work, is, I think, sort of a really essential or piece of practice. I think a second important one is move, we very often think of challenges in productivity or distraction in the workplace, etc., as being individual problems, right? Ones that I need to solve for myself. Sometimes in ways that, maybe create a kind of zero-sum game with my colleagues. But one of the great things about the 4-day week is that, in contrast, let's say, to flexible work programs, the 4-day week is something that everybody gets together and everybody creates together. So it's it creates a kind of incentive for all of us to cooperate to figure out how to do the work so that we can all leave at the end of the day Thursday or leave early every day, and leave no one behind, and sort of create a better workplace for us all. So, transformative leadership, thinking of this as a kind of collective challenge rather than a bunch of individual ones. Those, I think, are the two critical things. And then everything else is a matter of like logistics and scheduling and figuring out how to use your tools better.
Yeah. And some of that I think are some pretty big barriers for some organizations.
True.
So, where are you seeing this work? Are there countries around the world that are embracing this, that are doing this very successfully?
Yeah, well, there are countries that have done it first, but we are seeing it in Nordic countries that have great social welfare systems and good work-life balance, but also companies in Japan and Korea, right? Places that are notorious for overwork, so much so that they've both had to invent words for working yourself to death. So it is, one of the surprises for me is that this is less culture and nationality dependent than I expected when I first started researching it. I figured, it'd be like Sweden,
Yeah, we kind of
would
think that it's
would
always going to
happen
be a
there.
Scandinavian country that's running
Exactly.
the lead on this.
Right. But in fact, we see it in Asia, in Brazil, South Africa, in the United Arab Emirates actually moved its public sector to a 4.5 day week. And then, so it really is a global phenomenon. And then in terms of industries, there are ones where it's easier to do, like some kinds of creative services where project deadlines are long and there's some flexibility in how and where you work. But we also see it taking off in places like pest control companies, um, mainly because there's a lot of driving from one location to another. And what some companies have discovered is that the newest generation of routing software that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning comes up with all kinds of incredibly efficient routes that humans wouldn't imagine because it's going through like 500,000 different possibilities in a
Hmm.
few seconds. And those have become so efficient that technicians can now visit in 4 days the same number of sites that they had in five. And for an industry where, finding and keeping talent is sort of a real challenge, the ability to offer people a 4 day work week rather than five is, a great tool for for recruitment and retention. It's also really good for customers because it means that you know that the schedule that you set up with a company is much more likely to be followed when you're fully staffed than when they're having to scramble and find coverage for people because they're persistently short staffed. So it works, so there as well as everywhere else, it works out really well for customers as well.
And it has worked, and I think about hospitals, or I think about emergency services, police and fire, though, although those are usually 12-hour shifts over 4 days. And I don't think
Mhm.
you're suggesting that. What do you envision this looking like, though? I remember lots of conversations near the end of the pandemic saying, "Yeah, we're all heading to a 4-day work week anyway." And if I think back, and think about history, we used to work 7 days a week or maybe 6. And for sure we worked on Saturdays, and then it became a Monday to Friday. Do you think that in the future it will be a Monday to Thursday, or it'll be more flexible, it'll be any 4 days of the week?
As Yogi Berra said, prediction is hard, especially about the future. I think that there are lots of industries in which moving to a Monday to Thursday will be viable and preferable. It's really
It's
going to
not
depend.
equal for all then, is it?
No, no. On the other hand, work is not equal for all right now, right? There are people
Yeah.
who work night shifts, some do 12-hour shifts. And so, it's not, let's put it this way, it won't be exact, but it could potentially still be equal, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I think that uh, we don't, we're beginning to see experiments at the state level. There are in the United States, we've got legislation to trial 4 day weeks in public sectors in a couple American states. Hasn't happened yet, but I think in the next couple of years, we're going to begin to see experiments that try and figure out which combination of, let's say, tax incentives versus labor policy versus other instruments will help move the needle in ways that make the 4 day week sort of more widely available, but in a way that is as fair as possible.
Well, and I think, there's no question that flexibility in the workplace, hybrid workplace, evolution of the workplace is all happening very, very quickly. If there was, maybe one or two key takeaways for those who are listening, what would they be if they're considering going down this journey?
Mhm. I think that the first thing I would say is that this is a movement that has become sort of wider and sort of more popular than I ever imagined when I started researching it. That I am now working with hospitals, with a police department, um, implementing sort of 4-day work weeks, and so I think that there were there were more places in which it can be done and more reasons to try it than sort of not. I think we've also learned a lot in the last couple of years about how to do this in ways that are fairly safe, right? How to run trials that will tell you whether this is something that you can scale across your entire organization without, sort of risking blowing a big hole in your finances or creating real problems with or your clients or your production schedule. And then I think the last thing I would say is that there probably are already companies comparable to yours somewhere who have successfully made this jump to a 4-day week, from whom you can learn a lot about how you could make it work in sort of your own organization for your own people.
And I think if I could add one final word is don't forget about the productivity and
Right.
the changes that are necessary, especially around just the framing of the workday and the technology that is required to ensure that you're not missing out on those two big pieces, right?
Yeah, I think having clear, sort of clear metrics at the outset is really good so that, you don't have the experience after a few months where most people think it worked really well, but, sort of the board's not really sure because you didn't measure this particular thing. That's a disaster
Mhm.
waiting to happen. So having clear metrics at the outset, doing some planning, thinking about sort of how you can redesign the day, and setting some boundaries right around that establish, okay, if our numbers slip to this level, right, we've got to put this kind of on probation, and then if the numbers go here, if this thing happens, then we're going to bring the trial to an end, which provides some reassurance to our clients and skeptics that you're really taking this seriously, that this isn't just an opportunity to, have a 3-day weekend every week, and also underlines for everybody this is serious business, right? Sort of we think we can make this work, but there are certain things that we cannot sacrifice, and here they are. And if we cross them, then we go back to 5 days.
Well, speaking of skeptics, Dr. Pong, I was one coming into this conversation. You've opened my eyes to some of the benefits of considering this. And as I say, there's no question that the workplace is evolving. And if we want to attract and retain star talent, we have to be flexible and adaptable and willing to try new things. So thank you very much for the conversation today, Dr. Pong. I really do appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks very much. Great to talk to you.